Thank you. So again, I just want to remind everybody to please silence their cell phones so they don't go off during our presentations. So I'm going to have Mike Romero from Securitas, and I would really ask you, since we have so many things going on right now, we have so many people, if you have questions to ask of Mike Romero, could you email him or call him so he's not answering a bunch of questions right now? Unless it's a dire emergency that you must know. Thank you, Mike.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon, Sun Lakes. Is this thing on? Yes? No?
Here.
Better? That's better. So I'm going to touch up on a few items that have been brought up to our attention as much as I can, go through this as quickly as possible. But for those at home as well, I'm going to let you guys know what's happening around the community. In light of the recent fires that occurred yesterday surrounding Sun Lakes, we want to take this time to emphasize the importance of community safety and reassure residents that your security team is fully prepared to respond should an evacuation order be issued. Our team stands ready to initiate our evacuation protocol, which includes going door to door to notify residents to vacate, manning all gates to ensure smooth and safe exits, and deploying patrol units to manage traffic control in affected zones. We will also work closely with the Emergency Preparedness and Planning Team, also known as EPAP, to establish an emergency operation base at the main clubhouse. Additionally, we are actively monitoring wildfire developments through the Watch Duty application to stay informed on targeted areas and shifting conditions. Currently, as you know, there's been about 35% of the fires being contained. Thankfully, the winds are taking that fire eastbound, so rest assured it's not coming towards our direction. If the winds were to change, though, just be prepared because we are under evacuation warning level 2. As a precaution, we strongly encourage residents to take a few proactive steps now. Please have essential medications ready, make arrangements for your pets, and gather any critical documents or valuables that you may want to bring in the event of an evacuation. Staying informed, prepared, calm will ensure that our community remains safe and resilient in the face of an emergency. With the summer in full swing, things tend to heat up in more than ways than one. More visitors, more deliveries, and yes, more unexpected guests who somehow think Sun Lakes is open to the public during the summer. While we enjoy the season's energy, it also tends to bring the rise in things like trespassing, property damage, and suspicious activity. We encourage residents to stay alert, report anything unusual, and please don't leave the pedestrian gates propped open. Even if it's just for a minute, that usually is the minute when something slips right through. Make sure your guests are registered through the proper channels and always lock your homes and vehicles when unattended. Summer also brings out scammers who love to pose as contractors, utility reps, and offer special deals. That only works if you those special deals would only work if you act right now. If you don't request service, if you don't request service, don't feel pressured to answer the door, or feel free to call us to verify if they're actual contractors that are authorized or not. As always, never give out personal information to strangers, whether in person, over the phone, or online. Our team is here, ready to respond, but your caution and common sense go a long way in keeping Sun Lake safe and scam-free. Another concern that's been brought up to our attention is golf cart safety. Golf cart safety remains a growing concern in our community, especially with recent incidents involving carts failing to stop on posted signs and nearly striking pedestrians at full speed. These carts, while smaller and slower than typical vehicles, can still cause serious injury when operating recklessly. Residents are reminded that all stop signs apply equally to golf carts, and failure to obey them not only breaks community rules, but also endangers lives. Pedestrians have the right of way at all crosswalks and intersections, and golf cart operators must slow down, remain alert, and yield appropriately. As a precaution, we urge all drivers to treat golf carts with the same responsibility they would a full-size vehicle. This means no speeding, no distracted driving, and always keeping an eye out for foot traffic. Let's prioritize safety and keep our roads shared and safe for everybody. We also ask kindly residents refrain from yelling or using profanities towards our security team during gate closures. These issues are often related to technical malfunctions, and our team works closely with third-party vendors to resolve them as quickly as possible. So we thank you for your appreciation, and we appreciate you for your patience and understanding. Lastly, as we celebrate the 4th of July with fireworks and festivities, please remember to prioritize safety for both people and pets. Follow local rules, keep water nearby in case of an emergency. Fireworks can frighten our pets, so keep them indoors, close windows, and play soft background noise to help calm them. Ensure your pets have up-to-date ID tags and are microchipped, as we have seen a rise in stray pets here in Sun Lakes. A little preparation goes a long way in keeping the whole community safe and stress-free during summer celebrations. Together, let's keep our community safe, peaceful, and focused. Enjoy the best that we can in this summer. Your security team is here for all of your needs. We'll be here to assist you in any way, shape, or form that we can. Feel free to call me. I am accessible to you guys 24 hours a day. You can also email me, like Michelle Walters says. Our email is in the Lifestyle magazine. You can call our office directly and ask for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Okay, so now I would like to introduce, and I know you used to know him as our city council person, but he is now the executive director of Blue Zones here in Banning, and this is Ruben Gonzalez.
Well, how's everybody feeling today? Can you look to your neighbor and say, man, you look good today? Some of you actually meant it, which is really impressive. That was cool, because some of you are not good liars. You're like, you look good today. How many of you guys know about Blue Zones? Let me see you raise of hands. I want to get a quick pulse. Nice. How about how many of you know one or some of the 5 longevity hotspots to which Blue Zones originated? Oh, that hand went up fast. Which one? Loma Linda. I was like, that's usually the first one, right? That's right here in our backyard. Do you want to know why? Do you know why? Go ahead and tell everybody. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, and they have a heavy emphasis also on what they consume as foods as well, right? A lot of plant slant-based. What about another one? There's 4 more. Let's really test. She's the only one that knows? Oh, come on. What's another one then? Okinawa, Japan. We're the longest-lived women, right? Still riding their bikes, about 105 years old. Isn't that insane? It's lovely. What about another one? Anybody know another one? There's one in Costa Rica. Nicoya. Yeah, Nicoya, Costa Rica. There's also one in Italy. Do we know where that one is at? Sardinia. And what is that, 4? I'm not good at math. How many was that? So we got one more. We're in Greece. Ikaria, right? And so I know that some of you, who doesn't know about Blue Zones? Because that way I can kind of get a pulse about, okay, cool. So those are the 5 longevity hotspots. So our founder, Dan Buettner, in 1999, he partnered up with National Geographic to identify, well, he first saw that there was a World Health Organization report in Okinawa, Japan, that these individuals were living ridiculously long lives, but not just living long lives, but really healthy ones and better ones, right? So he was really interested in that. And like, what are they doing? Why are they doing that that's so different than the American way, than all the other countries? And so what they did is he came up with, he had researchers, anthropologists, and a bunch of other scientists that identified that there was these 5 longevity hotspots in our world. And those were the 5, and those are the ones that these people are living really long lives. And so what they did, they conducted data assessments, analytics, did all this scientific-based methods to extract what they were doing, put it in some sort of scientific model on how we can integrate it into other communities that are interested in adopting it, and then creating these Blue Zones projects so we can create all these different regions that are starting to live better, longer. And so that's the origin, right? And so what does that mean for Banning? Well, Banning was approached a few years ago, and we're in over probably about 90+ communities that have Blue Zones project. So it's not like we're the pilot program. Like, man, I hope it works in Banning. We'll just figure it out, right? The first one was actually in Minnesota, and they were able to reduce a lot of the horrible statistics in that area. And so that was a pilot program in the early 2000s, and so now we really have this model that is starting to work and being able to utilize in other communities. So right now there's 5 other projects in Riverside County. We're just one. So Riverside is also simultaneously doing their project, Banning, Palm Springs, Coachella, and Mead Valley. We're the first time in Blue Zone's history that we are the first county to have that many projects going on at the same time. So we're really trying to make a difference in our well-being in our county. With that being said, we have a team here on the ground for the next 3.5 years. And some of you may ask, like, well, how long are you here for? And what's that model? Well, our biggest word is sustainability. We want to work ourselves out of a job so that the community adopts the mentality and the initiatives, and we have an entire blueprint that's 100+ pages long, and that's really focused on sustainability so that when we're gone, a lot of those things will continue, right? We have to work with nonprofits, school districts, city council, schools, restaurants. There's a whole slew of entities that we have to work with. So with that being said, I want to introduce our team. So give it up for Robert Seibo. He's our well-being organization lead. Now, I'm going to give each an opportunity to talk a little bit about what their role is to see how you get involved. By the way, those who signed the sign-in list, don't be worried. You just signed up to do a 5-mile run. So just be prepared. Start prepping, stretching now, because we're going to do that in about 20 minutes, okay? No, we encourage you to have our sign-in list because we have a lot of free merch to give away to you. We also want to include you in our moais, which are basically a fancy word in Okinawa for clubs. So we have walking moais. We're going to have even hopefully golfing moais here, maybe pickleball moais. Those are just clubs to encourage natural movement, and so we want you to be included. Give it up for Ashley Radke. She's our community engagement lead. And she'll get to tell you the stuff that she's going to be working on in the blueprint. And then lastly, but not leastly, Thomas Miranda, our public policy lead. So I don't know if you can see it, but if not, it's okay because I can explain it. So we just came out of what our foundation period is, which is all planning. We did our discovery phase where that's where the solutions come out of. It's because I'm born and raised here in Banning, and so I know the culture, the demographic, and I'm very familiar with it. But there's our national team. Our national team is comprised with, I want to say, close to 100 subject matter experts in built environment, food systems, urban planning. They are our national team, and we rely on their expertise on how to do a lot of the solutions, but they don't know Banning like we know Banning, because we're from here, right? And so we have to partner together. We have to do these interviews, stakeholder meetings, and a lot of planning to get to where we are now, which we're entering on our transformation phase. So we're right there at the transformation phase, which is 3.5 years, where we are going to implement our blueprint. And if you're interested in that blueprint, that's another opportunity for you to go and sign in there, because we can share it with you so that you can see what our project is, because hope is not a strategy, and we're not just hoping that it's going to work. We work with the Gallup Wellbeing Index to identify what the statistics are now, so that every year we can analyze, okay, wow, there's stuff that's going on to change. Did you know that right now the national average for the smoking percentage is around 8%? You want to know what Banning is? It's 13. That's not a good statistic, right? So how can we, with working with public policy, to reduce and mitigate some of those? Because yes, we can't put all the smokers in one room and be like, okay, just stop, right? I mean, that would be awesome. But we can't do that. And so we have to strategically do things to either mitigate or minimize, especially for our young people. We've noticed that there's some smoke shops that are selling to minors. And it has a lot to do with flavored tobacco, right? And I'll have Thomas talk a little bit more about that. I won't give away his whole spiel, but those are the people. We are the team that's going to be on the ground for the next 3 years, integrating more into the entities to figure out strategies and how to implement our blueprint. So how you ask, statistically, what they found in those 5 longevity hotspots is what we call a life radius. 90% of where you spend your time, especially Sun Lakes, because you have an entire world here, you really don't have to leave. I mean, you can even get your groceries delivered if you wanted to, right? And so 90% of where you spend your time is within a 20-mile radius. So when we talk about built environment, which is where Robbie is going to be a lot focusing on, is what does the environment look like? Because that's going to change and dictate your consumption. If you're surrounded by a bunch of fast food restaurants, well, guess what? You're probably more statistically apt to consume that. If you're surrounded by a bunch of smoke shops and liquor stores, well, guess what? That's probably what you're going to consume. And so it's important for us that we focus on 3 pillars for Blue Zones. It's people, places, and policy. And that is the circumference on how we can problem solve for the well-being. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Ashley up, and she's going to talk a little bit more about what happens in the people sector.
Hi, guys. Hey, John. Thank you guys for having me here today. Like Ruben said, my name's Ashley. I'm the community engagement lead for Blue Zones Project Banning. And my job is to bring people together. So how can we as a community come together to do things together, to get to know each other, to meet new people? Something we have happening right now is what we call a MOI. And like Ruben mentioned, it's bringing people together. It's a community, it's a gathering. We currently are doing our first walking MOI happening here in Banning off of Wilson Street and Mountain Avenue. This started June 23rd, and it will be twice a week for 5 weeks until July 24th. So we encourage everybody who wants to come out and walk. I think we did as a team a couple weeks ago, and it ended up being about 1.4 miles. We've had a couple ladies out with their canes. We've had people with their kids riding bikes. So this was the first day, and it was a huge success. We are going to be out there again on Thursday, so if you guys want to come join us, it's from 6 to 7. Our next walking MOI we'll have on the east side of Banning at Roosevelt Park, so we'll send some emails out to whoever signed up to remind you guys about that one. We recently had our kickoff event on June 7th. I know we had some volunteers come out, so thank you guys so much for volunteering and helping us with that event. But if you did have a chance to make it out, you would have saw all the cool things that were happening. We had over 500 community members in attendance, from little kids to our seniors. There was something to do for everybody. It was super fun. Strong participation and engagement. We had special guest speakers from Congressman Ruiz to Supervisor Gutierrez and Nick Buettner. And then we also sponsored a pool day, which was super successful. We had a maxed out pool. We had to actually turn people away, and then they came back later on, so that was super fun. But these are all things that we want to do in the community as far as bringing people together, purpose workshops to really find out what your purpose is. Why do you wake up in the morning? What kind of things do you want to fulfill in your day? So with that being said, I'm going to take it over to Robert, our places policy lead.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, my name is Robert Seibel, and I am a lifelong resident of this beautiful city of Banning. And I spend a lot of time in in Sun Lakes. And from what I observe is Sun Lakes already has a lot of the Blue Zones characteristics that we are all, shooting for. One of the big things that we talk about the MOI is just so that people can get out and be with each other. So I read a statistic the other day that a day of loneliness is detrimental to your health like smoking 14 cigarettes a day. And especially in this community where we might have people that aren't able to get out, they might be living by themselves. Blue Zones is a great way for them to get involved in a MOI or in a purpose workshop or anything like that that can help them with those things. So, but what I bring to the team is I'm in charge of schools, restaurants, grocery and convenience stores, and work sites. I think I have the boring slide up here. Ashley gets to talk about all the fireworks, and I talk about all the brick and mortar stuff. But one of the big things that is at my core is schools. My mom was a teacher for 45 years in the city of Banning, and our kids are our future, and our kids, we need to make sure that we're taking care of them. So many kids are lost right now. They don't have a purpose in life, which is how we get the crime, the homelessness, kids wanting to buy cigarettes, kids wanting to drink, all that stuff that comes with them not having a purpose or not feeling important or being healthy. So what we do in the schools is we create an optimal education environment that supports and improves the well-being of students, their families, and staff. So one thing that's really cool about is schools is it's not only the schools for the children, but it's also a priority for work sites. So making sure that the employees, the teachers, the staff, the district team, that they are being able to take advantage of the Blue Zones as well. So enhance student well-being and school performance and foster purpose. Like I said, that's something very important right now that our kids need. As far as restaurants, man, growing up, we had the most amazing restaurants in the city of Banning, and those have kind of trickled away as I've gotten older. And so being able to bring those healthy options back to our community is something that's exciting. We had 4 or 5 food vendors out for our kickoff, and 3 or 4 of them are already ready to move forward with being approved as a Blue Zones restaurant. So that means they have a healthy option on their menu. You're going to be able to know, hey, this is a Blue Zone inspired menu item. This is what I want, and be able to have those healthy choices. So we make it really simple. But create optimal environments for customers, diners, staff, and establishment owners focused on healthy outcomes and choices. Promote healthy food and beverage choices. Promote local produce and healthy ingredients. So that's something that we've kind of been lacking, is having local produce in this area. But we have some exciting news about possibly a farmer's market that will be happening in the city of Banning that we're getting really close on. So that'll be something that will be able to bring local produce to our community as well. So, and then grocery and convenience stores. You know, for the city of Banning, we are very lacking in healthy grocery stores and that are economically friendly grocery stores. So we have Albertsons here, and then we have Cardenas, but they're kind of expensive, and then it's just a dust bowl going the rest of the way. So being able to have, the opportunity to have grocery stores here that have healthy options, that people can shop, from our whole city, not just one area. So that's very important to us. And then work sites. Create an optimal work environment that supports and improves the well-being of employees, employers, and their families. So develop well-being leaders, amplify policies, benefits, and well-being programs. So what's awesome about the way we do this is that you have this local team, you have the national team above us, and then we have a steering committee that, like Michelle is a part of, that is able to help navigate some of the things in our community. And then what we also have is a sector committee. So each one of us have sector committees that we need people like yourselves to volunteer for and help being part of those committees and how our community is going to be shaped around these 4 items. So if you're a school teacher, if you're a school administrator and you're retired, or you owned a restaurant, or you were in charge of a grocery store, managed a grocery store, if you owned a business, all of that expertise that you guys have, we need that. So I need to see everybody that got a Frisbee, a towel, a sunglasses that are in the back. Who got those? It's empty, so I know people got them. So you guys have just signed up for our first sector committee. I appreciate you guys. But no, we need people from this community to be involved because this is really how we're going to shape our city. That's how we're going to shape Sun Lakes and how Blue Zone impacts it. So we have a sign-up sheet back there. If you have more questions or concerns or anything you want to ask, I'll be around. Make sure you come up to me, and I'll be glad to answer any questions for you, okay? And I'm going to turn it over to my buddy, Tomas.
Thank you, Robert. Good afternoon. Now, I'm just going to make this quick because policy can go a long way. Everybody knows that, right? But just wanted to kind of brief you on the 4 sectors that we kind of look at that was assessed from the Blue Zones assessment phase. So built environment, food systems, tobacco, and alcohol were all the 4 policies that we're going to focus on. Built environment is just an example of safe routes to school. Safe routes to school, for an example, is how can we make an intersection more walkable or certain sidewalks more walkable, restriping lanes, restriping bike lanes for kids to use to get a safer and a fun and healthier way to get to school. And not for that, also designing and installing local signage at Gilman Ranch. That's one of our policies that we're going to be working on, and we're working with the county right now to try to implement those wayfinding. Did anybody know that Gilman Ranch had a hiking trail that you can go to now? Did anybody know? Anybody know about it? Well, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. It is a kind of a steep slope, but it's a good workout for sure. Food systems, we're looking at the farmer's market, how Robert says. We all tie in together here from people, places, and policy. And the food and the farmer's market, it's my job to make sure it is accessible to everyone in Banning, from Sun Lakes to the east side to north side and all the surrounding communities. So also making it more accessible to lower income families on the east side and all around Banning in general. But having them have market match, where the county, if you have EBT or SNAP, they double down on the produce that you buy out at a farmer's market. So you go buy $20 of produce at the farmer's market, you're gonna get $40 worth. That's the systemic change we're gonna make within the farmer's market on a policy side. How can we make it more accessible to empower everyone to go get those healthier options and make it the easy choice? Food pantries, trying to implement some policies with them and get them a little bit more up to date on their policies to integrate more healthier nutritious items. So a lot of people who can't buy those groceries or can't afford groceries for a week or a month, or if they're going through tough times, they can go to the food pantry and get get all their nutrition needs at that food pantry with food boxes or different perishables that they can receive from there. Tobacco. Actually, I just found this out. I just read the city ordinances that we want to kind of, at Blue Zones, we want to kind of make it a little bit more non-accessible to youth to not get flavored tobacco in their hands and sell at an early age. Because if you're under 21, you're not supposed to be smoking tobacco, right? So in the city of Banning, you have 3 offenses within a 6-month period. Once that 6-month period of one offense is done, it kind of refreshes. It's like a restart. So you may still have 2, but you go back to 3 after the 6 months of the first one, right? So you have these increments of first offense, 500, third offense, maybe 2,500, third offense, maybe 3,000 to 5,000, upwards of 1,000. But there's no cap. So corner stores and convenience stores that sell tobacco don't have an incline of getting their license revoked in the city of Banning. So trying to make those resolutions a little bit more aggressive towards a retailer if they're selling to minors. Also, for alcohol, same concept, but also making sure that the youth is knowledgeable and integrating schools into it and having those media math campaigns around the city and making signage more aware at public spaces like parks. Also for tobacco, same thing, parks, and making a social host ordinance so people are more aware of, you know, if you're giving too much alcohol to somebody, the dangers of what it can cause if once they leave either the premises, a restaurant, or your home. And that's pretty much on a policy overview of all I'm going to be doing within the next year and 3 years, and we'll be more than happy. I'll leave my card back in the table as well if anybody wants to pick it up, and I'll pass it back to our Executive Director, Ruben.
We'll go ahead and give it up one more time for all the team members that are doing a great job so far. And I'll wrap it up with just these last 2 slides real quick. This is just a call to action to you if you are interested in getting involved. This is something that if there's only 10, 15 people that are interested in changing our environment, then it's not going to work. It's not possible. And you guys have a lot of brilliance and expertise in the audience, so don't be selfish, right? Utilize that brain that God gave you and all those amazing assets and skill sets that you have to contribute, whether it's ideas or joining a MOI, any of those expertise that you can really contribute is going to change and make a big difference in this community. So we have our steering committee, but we still are always welcoming new people for our sector committees. Like Robert said, so many different ones, right? Grocery store, restaurants, businesses, school districts. So if you're interested in getting involved with any of those, please go back there and put your name on the sign-up sheet. Last slide, I just want to give a shout out. This is the reason why we get to do what we do, is because the health industry and the hospitals, which they're all more on the reactive side, right? You go to the hospital because you're sick. Usually don't go because you're like, oh man, I feel great, you know? It's usually because something's wrong. And so these entities, they recognize that the statistical analysis and the change in those other projects they saved a lot on healthcare costs, and it is a huge investment for them. So IHP Foundation, Kaiser, Molina, RUHS, Banning, Coachella, and then Eisenhower Health as well. Those are all entities that were already funded. So we don't have to go out there and beg for money. which is awesome because sometimes that's its own job. I don't know if you guys are in the nonprofit sector, but man, that could be all you do every day is just how can we get a funding for this and that. So we're really blessed that we already have funding for us to do what we do, but there's always opportunities. We also have Congressman Ruiz staff on our sector steering committee, Senator Ochoa Bogue, county supervisor, and so if there's projects that do need help funding, they're already like, hey, I'm ready. You let me know. And so we have a lot of support and backing, so we would love for you guys to be involved. Figure out how we can get Sun Lakes to have some MOIs of your own, and you can talk to Ashley about integrating that. And so we encourage you to have the sign-in sheet so that way we can work together and make Banning healthier and better. So thank you guys for having us today.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Robert, Ashley, and Thomas. As you know, I am involved with the Blue Zone. I'm on the steering committee, and I have to tell you, it is something you don't want to miss. Please, if you're interested in anything, please sign up in the back so Ashley can give you a call. Ruben, Thomas, we need your help. Sun Lakes is a huge community, and we do need your help. So if anybody has any expertise in anything, or you just want to find out what it's about, please put your name on the list and get involved. Thank you again. Okay, so where is Leah? I think she's in the back someplace. There she is. I'm asking everybody to please make sure you don't ask Leah any personal questions. You can ask her general questions, and please wait till the end of her presentation. And I'll have 2 microphones, one on this side, one on this side. You must speak in the microphone, otherwise they won't be able to hear you on our camera, okay? Thank you.
Thank you all for having me, and thank you for Michelle for inviting me. When Michelle reached out to my office a couple of months ago, I immediately told my secretary, yes, I want to do that. I love Sun Lakes. You guys have been great to me. So many of you have welcomed me into your families, into your homes. You've shared your personal drama, you've shared your concerns and your wishes, and I really appreciate it, and I love you guys. We've been through a lot together. My first client 21 years ago was a Sun Lakes couple, and you guys have been with me as I moved offices down from 6th Street to Beaumont Avenue, where I currently am. We were together in COVID when we were signing papers outside in the driveway and pushing papers in hazmat suits into your cars. So we've been through so much together, and I really appreciate you guys as a community, and I love you guys. So thank you for having me. So, I skipped ahead. I am not the techie person. Rob was my husband. He's the head of IT at my office. It's great to have him at home because I can have him fix things right away. So today we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. Talk about what probate is. I'm going to talk about common estate planning documents, why most people come to me. We're going to talk about some issues if you already have an estate plan, things that you need to look out for, and some common misconceptions that people have about what I do or about the probate law. And at the very end, we'll talk about questions. I don't mind personal questions, but if you want to do it afterwards, that would be better so we don't get into your personal things, because this stuff is so highly specific to your guys' situations, how much money you have, how your family gets along, all of that sort of thing. So that would be better talking to me. But I will stay afterwards and answer those kind of questions. And we'll have general questions and such after the presentation. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Beaumont. I graduated from Beaumont High School in 1997. I was locally educated. I come from a long line of people that grew up here. My grandma, Emily Gow, was born in Beaumont in 1910. She had the AAA towing business in Banning, that where Ramsey Street Ford went. She had a Chrysler dealership before that. I think now it's a Caliber Collision. But she lived with me up until her death, or for 2 years before her death, when she was almost 102. And my parents also are local. They have businesses here. My dad was a roofer. My mom helped with that. They own apartments and had a laundromat and that sort of thing. And they're still local. I have 4 kids. I'm married to Rob that you saw setting up my computer. He works for a software company, and he's also in law school. So I told him, hey, as you're approaching retirement, I know where you could work. So why don't you start going to law school now, and then when you're ready to retire, you can just come hang out with me. So that's my master plan. And we have 4 kids. My oldest one is 23 years old. She's a 3rd grade school teacher at Sundance. That's right up the street from you guys. I have the next one is at the University of Redlands. She said she wanted to be a lawyer. Now she's rethinking it, thinking business, but I think she'll come around. My next child is my son. He's 17 years old. He's going to be a senior in high school. He wants to be a lawyer, but he wants to do something that makes a ton of money, so mergers and acquisitions or something like that. I don't know what he's going to do. He's the financial guru, though, of the bunch. And the little guy is 4. So she runs the show. When she grows up, she says she's just going to be a worker at mommy's office. And she loves coming to work with me. So some people have seen her. She loves greeting you at the door and telling you to please have a seat. That's her big job. So I share this with you because I'm a better attorney because of my relationships. I've been a grandmother. I've cared for an ailing person who had her mental faculties up until the time that she died. I'm also a daughter. My parents now, my dad has Alzheimer's. He had a stroke last August. He's now in hospice. So I've been on that side. I've watched my mother be a caretaker for my dad. I know that struggle. I know the resources that you need, and I try to make it easier for you in my job. But I've also been a daughter and a mother. I know as a parent, I know your concerns. I know family dynamics. I know family drama. And I have ideas for how to help it. In 21 years, I've kind of heard it all. And I try to share my experience with you to make things go as smoothly as possible for you. So this weekend, my family's growing. My oldest daughter was just proposed to this weekend. So that's exciting news. And her fiance is Randy, who actually works at the office with me. He's a paralegal now. He's been working there several years, and he's going to law school. So he's a great guy, and we're happy to have him. If some of you have met him, he's the nicest guy possible. He's good to have. I'm not following my slides. There we go. So this is a picture of the key people at my office. Randy's the guy in the middle. He was the guy on his knee in the previous slide proposing. He's the paralegal that's in law school. Dorinda is I tell her she's my boss. She manages my calendar. She makes sure I get to where I need to be on time. She also is the first line person that helps my clients. She used to work at a bank, so she knows a lot of that stuff. Super friendly as well. My goal is that most estate planning attorneys, I deal with them. I know they're boring, they're dry, some of them are stuck up, they're hard to talk to. I don't want my office to be like that. You're sharing personal stuff with me, hard times with me. I want it to be a place where you feel comfortable, where you'll share things with me so I can help you better. I want you to like me. I want you to like my staff, and I go out of my way to try to make sure that you guys like me. And I want you to be happy. I want you to understand your documents. I want you to understand your options when you guys come to me. I want you to understand my advice. When I give you a bunch of legalese, hundreds of pages of documents, I want you to understand why you need them, what they're for, and basically what they do for you. Most people bring in big binders, 4-inch binders. They have no idea what that thing says. I want you to at least understand why you have something and what it's good for. And in the end, when you guys don't need help anymore, I want to help your families or the people that you've named to be in charge of your estate plans to help them carry out your wishes. So most people come to me because of probate. You've heard people talk about it. You've seen the houses in your neighborhood sit vacant for a long time because of probate. You've seen the low sales because of probate. It's typically a nightmare. So probate, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you land, is very attorney-driven. It's a very attorney-driven process. It'll kind of move as fast or as slow as your attorney. I once talked to an attorney when I first got out, and he said, well, probates are like Social Security, which I don't understand this, but this is what he said. And he goes, whenever I need some money, I just go through my drawer and I pull one out and I finish it, and then I get paid. And I thought, well, that's kind of crappy, because the client doesn't know any better because it's all in court and you don't know what's going on there. So it is a very attorney-driven process. There are things that slow down probate that I can't control. I file papers with the court. Sometimes it takes them a couple hours, sometimes a couple of weeks before they even look at it to deal with the paperwork that I file. Sometimes, depending on if you're San Bernardino County or Riverside County, luckily you guys fall in Riverside County, they're a lot faster, but our court dates are set way out. So these are the kinds of things that add to the delays in probate. And while you're waiting, the person that you've named in charge, or the administrator or your executor, if it's in probate, they can't really do anything until they go to court and get the letters of administration that some of you guys have heard of. I need letters. That's just a court document that says that you're in charge of the estate. So probate is, in general, there's a kind of a wide range of probate things. When people come to me and say, I need a probate, I ask, well, what property is involved? What happened that made you think that there's a probate, that you need a probate? Because sometimes it's, I went to the bank, someone died, I went to the bank and they said, we're not telling you anything, you need to go to court. That's usually what a bank says to people. You need letters of administration, you need probate. So that may be true. That usually happens if you have an estate or some money in the bank that didn't have a beneficiary. And that could be easily fixed with just like a one-page paper. So that does fall under the probate code. It's part of probate, but it's not that big, scary probate that most people are afraid of. So that's part of probate. Between that one-page paper, which is called a small estate affidavit, that is good for collecting just like bank accounts or things that are in an account that don't have any money, it goes from there to a full-blown probate that we talked about with houses sitting. And to put it most simply with a probate is the process of gathering a person's assets that's died, identifying and gathering the assets, identifying creditors, who does this person owe money to, paying the creditors, and then distributing what's left. So if any of you have been through probate, and I see some people here that are in probate right now, or the administrator, you guys know that there's a whole lot of stuff in between those things. So it's a pain in the butt. I mean, identifying assets is a pain. That's a job in and of itself. It's hunting down records. It's filling out the records for all of the different financial institutions, giving them all the proof that they need and that sort of thing. That's a pain. The next part we do when identifying assets, we tell the court, we do an inventory and appraisal. So that's not saying, they had this many dishes and 2 couches and stuff like that. It's really you say, okay, we had personal property. What else did we have? We have accounts that are in the bank and real property. So that's part of the probate process that takes time. Then it's liquidating the assets. That's probably the biggest thing that takes a lot of time in probate, because you have to deal with realtors, you have to do estate sales, or deal with the stuff inside the house, the sentimental things perhaps, or just the personal belongings, and that takes time. So that is all part of the probate process. And then in the end, then we tell the court what we've done. We tell the judge this is who we want to give this stuff to according to the law or the will. And the judge makes an order and we distribute the property. And that's kind of how a probate goes, but typically it's about a year. If we get it wrapped up in a year, that's pretty good. Sometimes they go on longer. Why? Either it's the attorney or people fighting, or sometimes it's the administrator. That's just, they have a hard time. They have things going on with their own lives. They'll get to it when they get to it. And that sometimes happens. So in between the small estate affidavit, that one-page thing where you get stuff from like a bank or something, and a full-blown probate, there are all these different kinds of petitions that fall under the probate threshold, or fall under the probate umbrella, but aren't really that big probate. One is a petition to determine succession to real property, which is now a petition to determine succession to primary residence. We had recently some big changes in probate. And that is where you go to court and you say, hey, we have a house and these are the people that are entitled to it, and give the house to us. So you're still going to court, but it's one hearing now. So that was the biggest change in probate recently is the probate thresholds. So here on the slide, we kind of have it. It's a huge thing. Right now, so probate used to be, if you had anything under $180,000, $188,000, you had to go through probate. So basically it was, if you have a house in California, you're gonna have to go through probate for most people. Now the probate threshold is $750,000 for a primary residence. So that's good for our area. Most of us, for your primary residence, if you die and you don't have a trust or some of the other things that we'll talk about later, it won't push you into the full-blown probate. So that's good. The reason why this was done, the courts are overburdened, probate takes a long time, it's complex, and it's expensive. So the state government, in the legislature was thinking this is gonna solve a lot of problems. If we keep all these houses that are under $750,000 out of probate, things are gonna be super easy. So the bad part about it, on my end, I was going, oh no, this is gonna be bad. And the reason why is, with these petitions, instead of having like one administrator or one executor that deals with a lawyer, that deals with the courts and such, you have multiple people. So whoever's are the beneficiaries or the heirs to your property, all of those people have to hire a lawyer. All of those people have to sign all the court paperwork. All of those people have to petition the court. They have to figure out how collectively they're going to decide on which bills get paid. They're going to all have to agree that they choose a price to sell the property, and who the realtor is going to be, and all of that stuff. And the bad part is that how the process works is you go to a judge, all four of the beneficiaries or administrators, whatever, you go to the judge and say, put this house in my name. The judge says, okay, and puts the house in all of their names. So I have a case right now. We have 11 petitioners. A house is going to have 11 people owning the house. So, and this is actually kind of best case scenario under this will, because all of the 11 kids were alive. A lot of times you have kids that are predeceased the parent. And so just imagine if we had 2 or 3 of those 11 kids that were deceased or whatever, we'd be dealing with their children. Those children would all be petitioners also. So it would have been super bad. Luckily, all 11 children are living. They all get along. They all are capable of signing papers, and they've reached an agreement. I'm blown away that they're getting along. And the judge put the house in all 11 of their names. So now they're going to have to pick a realtor together. They're going to figure out they're going to pay the bills and what they sell the house for and all that stuff. So to me, that's going to be the biggest drawback, because so many of my clients have one kid or grandkid that they're not too sure about. I don't know what's going on with this guy. I don't know if it's his spouse, his wife, if it's drugs, he drinks too much, he gambles, whatever the case is. Most people, you've got the one somewhere in the family. And God forbid that one be one of these 11 people that is going to have to say, yeah, I'm going to help you and go through probate. Typically that one, if they have these issues, is like, no, give me the money. I want the money, you handle it, and I want the money, and why didn't I get the money before? So you're stealing from me. That's usually what we have. And so that's my biggest concern, is what I think we're going to see with probate, is in this petition to determine succession to primary residence, is you're going to have really family dynamics be huge, because we don't have one person in charge anymore. You don't really get to pick who's in charge. Even if you have a will and have an executor, it doesn't matter. The executor isn't the one that brings this petition, it's all of the people that are inheriting. So if you have charities or minor children, can you imagine the things that can go wrong? So that's going to be the biggest kind of change. Some people saw this and thought, oh, great, I don't need an estate plan now, because who cares? It's not going to be this long, year-long probate process anymore. It's going to be this quick little petition. In my mind, right now, more than ever, you should deal with estate planning to make sure that stuff doesn't happen. Because if you have a trust, or one of the other things that we're going to talk about, it's not going to be all of your beneficiaries agreeing on things. It's going to be your successor trustee, the person that you've named and said, hey, this person's the most responsible. I want them to be in charge. I want them to pay the bills. I want them to decide when it's time to distribute the money, when the taxes are paid for and all that stuff. So that's the biggest thing in probate. So if you have other property, like not a primary residence, that will likely go to probate. So if you have a rental property, that's going to be a regular full-blown probate. And also the judges say, well, if people don't really get along, or you have that one wayward kid, you can force it all to go into a regular probate too. So they're saying that remains an option, but I haven't had that happen yet. But that's new as of, I think, March or April 1st in California. So we'll see how that plays out. So in between all of these things, there's also what happens if there's two of you and one spouse dies. So a lot of people think, well, if there's two of us, we don't really need to worry about it yet. I can wait till it gets down to one of us and then worry about the estate planning. And sometimes that's true. If most spouses hold their things jointly, so if you're joint tenants on your house with your spouse or your domestic partner, or you're registered as community property with rights of survivorship, then you're probably right. When one spouse passes, it's not going to be a big issue for the surviving spouse in terms of probate stuff. But there are a lot of times when, for one reason or another, maybe you refinanced your house and one spouse had better credit than the other, so one spouse goes off title, so you get the better interest rate. That will put your house in one spouse's name. Or if a spouse came into the marriage or the relationship with their house before, and they don't really want to add it as a joint asset, because if things go wrong, or they don't want to deal with the other person's kids or a divorce or whatever, so they want to keep their house in their name. That's understandable. So that's a way where spouses can have an issue where one spouse owns things. So a common misconception, though, is people think, well, it's my spouse's stuff. Of course it goes to me. And it might, but it's not automatic. So if you have a will or a trust and it says it goes to the spouse, then of course it'll go to the spouse. But if you die and you're married and you have something that's in your name only and your spouse's name isn't on it, then the probate code has a special procedure for that. And it's shorter than the regular probate, should be nicer than that, when it's called a spousal property petition, or a domestic partner petition. And for domestic partner petitions, you have to be registered domestic partners. So it can't be, there's no common law spouses in California. So it's not like we've lived together 20 years, of course he's going to get it. No, you have to be registered domestic partners. So in this petition, you say basically to the judge, hey, I'm the surviving spouse. This house was inadvertently in his name only because of whatever reason. You tell the judge why. And most of the time it's a refinance, in my experience, where people think that it was jointly owned, but it really isn't. And it's because they refinanced it at some point, and the financial company, the bank, took it out of the trust, and you didn't even know that that happened because you're signing papers and didn't really pay attention. That happens a lot. So you tell the judge, hey, this person died. Look, the property was our property. We bought it together, and it should go to me. And as long as you can convince a judge that it's really community property, and then even without a will, it will go to the surviving spouse. But the problem arises when you have any kids, because they have an interest in the separate property. So even if you're married, if you have separate property, which separate property is stuff you had before you were married, or it's stuff that you inherited, or it's something that you were given. So if your house is one of those things, or it was purchased in any part by a gift from someone, or a house that you sold before you got married to your current spouse, then that property, your house, has a separate property aspect. So you have to tell the judge about that separate property asset. The kids get noticed. Hey, well, you're going to say, this is all community property. Of course, we thought it was ours. We bought it together, all that sort of thing. But the kids can fight that and say, my dad sold the house in West Covina and bought this house for you. It's really not your separate property, even if there was a mortgage or something like that. So that becomes a problem, because you have a surviving spouse in a house that they may not get all of. So you have to deal with kids inheriting part of a house, buy them out, or get it appraised, all of that sort of junk. What I try to do is tell everyone stay nice to each other. In most of my experience, kids will say, and I'm shocked to say that this is what's happened, kids say, I don't want the house, it's yours, and they sign something saying, if I even have an interest in this house, I give it to the surviving spouse, and it goes to court, and it goes to the surviving spouse. But it's always kind of a tenuous situation. I always am worried with spouses where you have a house in one name and the person dies, because it could turn into opening a can of worms of figuring out how much you got to pay someone else to keep your house. But that is part of the probate process. So what keeps you out of court? An estate plan keeps you out of court. A properly funded estate plan keeps you out of court. So just having a living trust isn't enough. You have to make sure that your stuff is actually titled in the name of your trust, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But when I talk about funding a trust, people go, well, what does that mean exactly? It means that your stuff is titled in the name of the trust, that the assets itself is in the name of the trust, not that the trust references the asset. So that doesn't matter so much. The other thing that keeps you out of probate is having something that's jointly owned. So if you are community property with rights of survivorship or joint tenants, that keeps you out of probate. Or on other assets, bank accounts and stuff like that, it's having a beneficiary. So to put it most simply, your stuff needs to know where it goes when you die. So it's either in an estate plan or on the asset itself. You have a transfer on death or a pay on death beneficiary at the bank, then that stuff will go automatically to those people, and it shouldn't be a probate issue. So when most people come to me, they want to avoid all of the mess that we just talked about, the probate stuff and all of the potential complexities that go along with it. And basically what I do is an estate plan. And when we talk about an estate plan, people are like, what does that even mean? No, I want a trust. And that's true, but really there are multiple things that are part of an estate plan that I think most people should have. A trust is really the key. That's the big hitter. That's what says who gets your stuff when you die. It says who's going to be in charge. It's going to provide for contingencies. What if these people die? Then what happens to the things? But a will is also a key component. I have, when you have a trust, your will is just called a pour-over will, and it's just a backup plan to your trust. It just says, hey, everything I have, put it in my trust. Also, powers of attorney for healthcare and finances are important, and some other documents that are less heard of are also important. To set up an estate plan, you have to have capacity. So I have a lot of clients that are brought to my office, or potential clients brought to my office by a kid or a caretaker or something like that. They have no idea who I am, what I do, why they're there. That doesn't fly. So the minimum threshold for estate planning, the capacity, for the capacity to make a will is knowing how much money you have and who would get it if you died. So you just have to have an awareness of how much you're worth. And in later stages of dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff, there are times when people, they think they're either billionaires and their private jet flew them there, which has happened, or they have absolutely no idea how much money is in the bank. So then they don't have the capacity to make the decisions about their money because they don't really realize, oh, I'm giving this kid $2 million and this one's only getting $100,000. So you have to know how much you have and who would get it if you didn't do anything. The capacity to make a trust is higher. You have to have the legal capacity to enter a contract. So that's basically, you have to be aware of what you're doing. You have to have the stuff for the will too. You have to know what you have, who would get it. But you have to be aware of the legal consequences of signing this because it's a legal document. It's like a contract. So we get into things where we get into capacity at my office, and that's always kind of not too exciting because it's awkward when you don't have capacity. So a living trust, basically, that's the key hitter. We'll talk a little bit more about that. That's the one that if it's properly funded, it avoids probate. So it says in the trust, the biggest things that I tell people they need to know for having a living trust is you need to know who you want to get your stuff when you die and who's going to be in charge of taking care of it all. And that's really a simplified version, but that's really the biggest thing when people say, what do I need to think about? Those are the two things. Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be your successor trustee? With a living trust, your successor trustee isn't just acting when you die. So with a living trust, it also provides that if you are alive and become incapacitated, Your successor trustee, who you've named, can step in and manage the trust assets for you during your lifetime. So they would take care of your trust stuff to pay your bills and make sure that you're okay whatever the situation is. If you need a caretaker or you're in a home or something like that, that they're paying the bills when you can't pay the bills. So a living trust, when you think about it, it needs to be who's going to wrap stuff up, but also who would be here if I became incapacitated? Who would pay the bills? Who would make sure that I go into a nice place and that sort of thing? It's typically your person in charge would do all of that stuff. That kind of overlaps with another document that we'll talk about later, your power of attorney for finances. So the trust, because you can step in if you become incapacitated, that avoids a conservatorship. And a conservatorship is just a court process where if a person becomes incapacitated, someone needs to step in and be appointed to manage their finances for them. It's kind of a big mess. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of paperwork to the court. A living trust would avoid that also, or it should. So in a trust, this is where it gets kind of funky. If you're married, there are several different trusts that you can have. So you can have the most simple process, the most simple trust is everything I have goes to my spouse, and when they die, then we want it to go to these people. But what that means, though, is when you die, it goes to your spouse, that they'll have full control. That's what most people want. But then you have to realize your spouse can get ticked at everybody and leave it all to the Red Cross or whomever they want. So that's in a typical trust. The spouse will have total control. That's usually what most people want. But sometimes people don't want that, either because they have a blended family or the spouse doesn't like the kids or the kids don't like the spouse or something like that. So then we can get into more complicated types of trusts. One of the most common types of trust, it's still a living trust, but you set it up where it's often referred to as an A-B trust or a Q-chip trust, something like that, where when one of you die, it becomes partially irrevocable. So then, which is kind of a pain in a different way, because if one person dies and you have this kind of trust, you have to figure out what the trust says of splitting these assets. And usually it says something like, all of my community property and my separate property, if I die first, it goes into this irrevocable trust up here. Nobody can change this. But my surviving spouse, if they need money, they can get some of it. But they actually have to need it. So that causes a problem because people are like, what? This is our joint stuff. I own this, so now I have to give part of it up to this irrevocable trust. Most people hate that idea. It's also complicated for taxes. The irrevocable part is supposed to pay its own tax return or have its own tax return and stuff like that. It becomes its own little entity with its own tax ID number and stuff. So most people, when they hear that, don't like that. But that's really the best alternative to giving your spouse everything and letting them change their mind. So I have a lot of clients that go, no, let's just do it that way. Leave it to my spouse. I'll haunt you if you change things. And they make a pact like, we're not going to do it. But, it really depends on what happens afterwards. I have spouses that come to me and say, you know what? When their dad was sick, they didn't come. None of them showed up for the funeral, or they showed up at the funeral and they were jerks. Or they're already with their hand out asking me for money. I don't want to leave these kids anything. And if you have that more general trust, you can change it and say, I'm not leaving these guys anything. So that's one of the couple of things. You can also have, if you really want to be more safeguarded, spouses can do their own separate trusts. Most people don't do that, or they'll have a joint trust and separate trust. Like if you have significant assets that were separate property, either because you inherited or something, I might say, hey, you could make a separate trust for that and keep your joint stuff together and have a separate trust just for your separate property assets. So that's one option. In a trust, you can also provide for contingencies, which a lot of my clients are like, hey, Lee, I didn't think about that. Where I say, okay, well, what happens? So you want to split it all between your kids. But what happens if one of your kids predecease you? Does it go to their children, or does it go to your surviving children? And if it goes to their children, at what age should those children get the money? And who's going to hold that money for them? Usually it's your successor trustee that would set up a special account for kids, like grandkids or whatever. And in the trust itself, it would have an embedded children's trust, where you could say, okay, if I have a beneficiary that's under 21 or 25, I want my trustee to hold this money. And if they need braces or they want to go to college or something else that my trustee feels is worthwhile, my trustee can give that kid money ahead of time. And then when they reach this age that you've decided, then go ahead and just pay it out. So this can be, kind of a pain in the butt for trustees because you're managing money over a long amount of time. And sometimes it's bad because you have someone knocking at the trustee's door all the time asking for money. But that's one of the things that you can deal with relatively easily in a living trust. You can also do life estates. I know a lot of my clients have a house, they get a partner that they're not necessarily married to, or maybe they are, but they don't want to give them the house, but they have been living together and they want to make sure they can stay there when they pass. So that's called a life estate or a life tenancy. And that's where you say, I want this person to be able to stay in my house until they die, but when they're gone, then the money from that gets paid out to my kids or my beneficiaries. And oftentimes, people don't think about the stuff of the day-to-day things when that happens. So you die and you have someone as a life tenant. What happens if you need a new roof? Who pays for it? What happens if the person that's living in the house doesn't pay for the insurance? Or they're not paying the HOA dues, or they're getting HOA violations and getting liens? Who's going to pay for that? So sometimes people go, well, my kids can do that. And then I say, well, think about it, though. Your kids have someone else living in this house that they do have an interest in. It's called a remainder interest. They get it when this person's gone. But those kids are going to have to come up with the money to pay these things. So that kind of turns into an issue. I often recommend hold money aside to pay these things as a backup plan. But that's also complicated because you're holding money in a trust for an indefinite amount of time until someone passes. And then we have to think about, what if that person that you gave the life estate to, what if they need to go into assisted living? Do you keep the house and maintain it in case they come back? Or do you say, okay, if you're gone for 30 days, then your right to live in my house is over and it goes to my kids? So those are all kind of funky things that people think this is a good idea. I'm just going to let you live here until you die, and then it's going to go to my kids, which I understand. That sounds like a really logical idea, but it's all of the stuff that I have to do that kind of complicates it, and it frustrates my clients. They're like, I had this figured out, Leah, until you brought up all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's true, but you have to think about these things, because if we don't think about them in your trust, what happens is if there's a problem, you got to go ask a judge how to fix it. So that's why I like to plan for all of these things that you don't necessarily want to talk about in your trust. And then the provision for minors that we talked about a little bit, where if you have kids that you want to, or grandkids that you want to leave money to, you can do it directly in the trust. You can do it under one of two ways. You can say that I want it to go to their parents under the Uniform Transfer Gift to Minors Act. So if you trust their parents, that the parents aren't going to rip off the kids, you can do it that way. Or you can say, no, I don't want it to go to the parents. I want my trustee to hold it until they get to a certain age. So those are things that you can do in a trust. I had a client recently call me. She has a probate issue where her mom had a house and didn't have a beneficiary. And I said, okay, we can deal with that in court. And she goes, well, we figured out the rest of the stuff. My mom put my kids on as beneficiaries of her bank accounts. The reason why is because my kids are going to live longer than all of us, so that makes it easy. And so I said, well, I don't know about that. So she goes down to the bank trying to collect $600,000 that have a 7, a 5, and a 3-year-old named as the beneficiaries. And the bank is like, yeah, no, I'm not giving you any information. You got to go to court. So she calls me. I'm their mother. Of course I can get this money. This was a grand plan. Like, we had it all figured out. It's going to help my kids. I don't necessarily need it right now. So what she's going to have to do is either put it in a blocked account. We have to go to court, ask a judge to put it in a blocked account that she can't access until the kids turn 18, and then it's just handed to them. Or we have to do a what's called a guardianship of the estate of a minor, which probably we won't need. But that would be something where you'd have to have yearly check-ins and tell the judge what you're doing with the money. So if you want to leave money to kids, which is a great idea, it's better to do it in a trust. Don't put them as beneficiaries on things. That complicates stuff. So funding the trust is important. A lot of people come to me when they have a trust and they realize they think it's all taken care of, and I ask, okay, what's in the trust? And they flip through the trust and they go, well, I think it says something about PFF Bank that's no longer in existence and stuff like that. That's what's in my trust, Leah. And I tell them, no, it doesn't matter what your trust says it owns. So a lot of times at the back of a trust, it'll say this is an Exhibit A of the trust, and it says this is my initial trust property. A long time ago, people would make these, attorneys would make these very specific. It would list all of your account numbers in your banks, which really freaks clients out because banks change, bank names change, account numbers change. So that's really not the best way to go, but your Exhibit A would have this list. But that doesn't really mean anything. That won't keep that asset out of probate in and of itself. So what you need to do is make sure your bank itself knows that you have a trust and they put the account in the name of your trust. This is relatively easy at most banks. The only one I've heard is difficult is Chase. So Chase Bank says, no, you have to open new accounts if you put your account into the trust, which will change your Social Security direct deposits and all of that sort of thing, your automatic bill pay. Every other bank calls it a relationship change. Well, your bank account doesn't need to change. The number doesn't need to change. You don't need to open a new account. They just call it a relationship change, where they just change the owner of it. You're still the owner. It's still going to go on your taxes, but it's putting stuff in the name of the trust, which is called funding the trust. The general rule of thumb that I tell people is everything except for 401ks and IRAs should be put in the name of your trust. So when people come to me for estate planning, I take care of the real property. We do a deed, a grant deed that I record at the recorder's office that transfers your house into the trust. But you have to deal with the banks. I can't go to the bank for you and transfer your accounts to the trust. I wish I could. But this is one of the drawbacks to having a trust. When you have a will, you sign it and you forget about it. You put it somewhere and it's one and done. You don't have to think about it. With a trust, you have to make sure your stuff is in the name of the trust. So it's making sure that your accounts themselves know about the trust. And one thing that I've hit upon a couple of times is watch out for refinancing your house. Not just reverse mortgages and that sort of thing, but any kind of refinance. It really depends on the lending institution. Some of them will make your house be out of the trust before they loan you money on your house. And so if you've refinanced your house since you did your trust, take a look and see if your house is in the name of the trust, because a lot of times people don't realize that their house wasn't in the name of the trust. And then if they die that way, we have to do another probate provision, which is called an 850 petition, asking a judge, hey, this person thought their house was in the name of the trust. Can you put it in the trust for them? But my goal is you want to avoid court. If everything is running properly, you shouldn't have to go to court for anything. So if your trust is properly funded, your assets are titled in the name of the trust, then you shouldn't have to go to court. And then on your retirement accounts, you should name your spouse or your significant other first, whoever your beneficiary is first, and also name contingent beneficiaries. So those are things that are important when you have a trust. You can also circumvent your estate planning. So I have people that are like, well, I have a special friend that I want to leave some money to that I don't really want to put in my trust. You can do that. And you could do that by taking money out of the trust and just putting them as a beneficiary on things. So just make sure that you do it correctly. Banks are kind of notorious for adding people onto your account when you didn't really want that, when you just wanted them to get it when you're gone. So just be careful that you're actually adding them as beneficiaries. But that's one way that people kind of supplement or circumvent their estate plan, is by having separate accounts that they name beneficiaries on. So the next part is a will. I have clients that come to me, I don't want a will. I don't want a will, Leah, because that goes through probate. And it's right. If you just have a will, most of the time it would have to go through probate in order to get to your beneficiaries. That's most of the time, but not always. Kind of depends on your assets. But the will that I do when you have a trust is very secondary to your trust. It's a thing that you kind of hope that nobody ever really looks at. It's like a backup plan. All your will says when you have a trust, it's a pour-over will, and it just says, everything I have goes to my trust. And people go, why do I need it? I don't want it. I don't want to go through probate. And I say, well, you need it because what if you die and you have a winning lottery ticket in your pocket? And who would get that money? So if you didn't have a pour-over will, it would go by the laws of intestate succession because it's not a part of your trust. So it would go by intestacy, which may be okay for you, but that could mean that it goes to people that you don't want to necessarily get your stuff. So having a pour-over will just ensures that if you died and you had that $1 million lottery ticket in your pocket, that would go to your trust and it would go to your trust beneficiaries. But a will alone, yes, it isn't the best estate planning tool for most people. There are times when people come to me that I say, you know what, a probate wouldn't be bad for you in your situation. Why? Like, one instance is if you have family that's all out of the country, and you just have your neighbor that's your super best friend that you were going to put on as a successor trustee. Sometimes if that neighbor, you don't really trust them, having a living trust isn't the best thing, because the neighbor could take all the money. Your people in the other country would never know. So that's what I worry about. There are certain times, very few times, when I say, yeah, you should just have a will. Don't worry about a living trust. But there are times if you don't own real property, if you're just a renter, that a will will suffice and you won't have to go through probate. With a will, you could name beneficiaries and that sort of things and do other things to keep you out of probate. So the next document that I sometimes say is the most important document that I do is your power of attorney for healthcare. Your power of attorney for healthcare says how you're going to live and how you're going to die. It's where you say things about life support, if you want to be kept alive on life support or not. You get to specify, what does life support mean? Does that mean a feeding tube? Does it mean artificial nutrition and hydration? Or is it just being on a ventilator? What is life support? You can say, hey, I don't want to be kept alive on life support and most people say, if I'm terminally ill and I'm going to die anyway, don't keep me on life support to fix my immediate problem just to die later. Or if I'm in a persistent vegetative state, don't hook me up to machines and give me a feeding tube if I'm not coming out of this. Or if you're in irreversible coma and it's not going to get any better. It's like the Terry Schiavo case. It's been a while, but the person that was in her mind was gone. She was, but the family kept her alive on life support. So in your power of attorney for healthcare, you can say all these things. You can also say who's going to be that person that talks to the doctors for you. And while I say it's the most important document that I do, I say that because it's emotional support for the people making the decisions. I mean, I can say 99.9% of my clients do not want to be kept alive on life support. Most people do not want to be kept alive unnecessarily. They want to pass as free from pain as possible. They don't want this. But most of the people making the decisions, or some of them, don't really know if that's what you really want. So I've had so many family members come to me, I don't know if I made the right decision for mom. And I tell them, no, most people do not want to be on life support. But really, it's just the emotional support that you're giving in that document that you're signing your name to, that just to tell your family members or whoever's making the decision, this is what I want. In this document, you can also talk about organ donation or whole body donation. You can put parameters on that if you want things donated or not. You can talk about what happens if I get Alzheimer's or dementia, which is close to my heart. I don't know what to do with that. What if your mind goes bad? Would you want your body to be treated? If your mind was bad and you got COVID, would you want it to be cured, or would you want COVID to be your ticket out? Some people say, no, let the pneumonia or COVID or whatever take me if I don't know who I am, if I'm physically dependent on other people and I can't meaningfully interact with people, I don't want to be alive. Or you can say nothing and let whoever is making the decisions decide that. But it is a good thing to have or to think about. If your mind is gone but your body's still okay, do you still want all your medicine? Do you want a pacemaker? Those sorts of things. You can talk about cremation or burial, which is important. I had one client that she had prepaid for her cremation, but in her power of attorney for healthcare, she said she wanted to be buried. People were fighting. Her body was going back and forth between family members to different cremation places. What are we going to do with her? Until they pulled out the power of attorney for healthcare, which will trump anything else that you had before. So this is one document that if you die, your power of attorney for healthcare should still be good. The person that you've named will have control to say, nope, it's cremation or burial, even if you had prepaid other plans. And then you can talk about if you want a funeral or a memorial or not. The other thing that goes along with this is a HIPAA release. You know, HIPAA is the thing that keeps the doctors from disclosing your privacy rights, but before you can talk to your doctors, you have to waive all your privacy rights anyway so they can get their money. So the thing that they have you sign before you do anything at the doctor's office on the little black pin is you're saying, I don't care, go ahead and give Medicare my insurance, waive my privacy rights, tell them what's going on with me. But when in your legal documents, you need to do a HIPAA authorization to specifically say this person can get my medical records. How powers of attorney for healthcare, in my experience, typically play out is you're in a hospital and someone goes, do they have an advance directive, or is there a power of attorney for healthcare? And someone goes, yes. And they go, okay, I need to talk to you. The doctors aren't poring over this document, so you really hope that the person that you've named to be in charge is familiar with it and knows what you want. So the next thing is a power of attorney for finances. The power of attorney for finances is only good when you're alive. So I have people tell me, I have power of attorney for finances. I know they're dead, but I can do things because I have power of attorney. That's not true. A power of attorney for finances is only good while you're alive. So a durable power of attorney for finances is what most people talk about when they talk about power of attorney for finances, but the durable part has a legal term to it. It's important, and it just says this power of attorney for finances is going to be good even if this person goes down and loses their mind, the power of attorney for finances still works. So originally, just a regular power of attorney that wasn't durable would only be good while you're good. So if your mind went bad or you were in a coma, that power of attorney is no good. So most of them are durable. They last longer than you do, basically. You can make the power of attorney springing or immediate. So the springing power of attorney says, I give this person the power to handle all of my financial things, but only when a doctor says that I'm incapacitated. And which is a good idea, because most of us don't want the people that we've named stepping in too soon, getting into our business. My concern is it does make it more difficult for the person that you've named to be in charge to take over your finances for you. And especially as Beaver went to Optum, I've had a couple clients that say, well, my neurologist at Optum won't say that my wife is incapacitated because they're not going to swear under penalty of perjury that that's their opinion. So when it was Beaver, I used to be able to call Beaver and say, hey, go educate your neurologist about the law and tell them that they can sign this, and it's fine. Well, Optum, you can't, in my experience, can't get a hold of anybody. You go to some routed thing, and the call drops. So that's kind of scary. So I usually recommend if you trust your person that you've named under your power of attorney for finances, it's usually a good idea to make it effective immediately. And if they step in too soon, which hopefully they don't, if they're good, they're not going to want to take over your bills so soon or before they need to, then you can just revoke the power of attorney for finances if your mind is good. But making it springing where it's only effective when you're incapacitated does add an extra little burden to them. But they'll get through it one way or another. It may be more difficult, but I tell people, if that's what you want, I'm fine with it. It's still a legal document, and it's still going to work. It just may be a little bit more difficult. So a long time ago, before I became a lawyer, attorneys would routinely make powers of attorney for finances and healthcare expire, either within 5 years or 7 years from the date that it was executed. So if you have an estate plan that was done in the 80s or 90s, it may be good to look up and see if you have a power of attorney for finances or healthcare, and see if, usually it's near the back, see if it has an expiration on it, because sometimes those expire. So when you have an estate plan, usually you're setting up the people that are going to be in charge and your beneficiaries as best as you can. But people often ask me, what else can I do to make things easier for my beneficiaries or my successor trustees? And really telling them where the money is helpful. A lot of times people come to me and they go, well, how do I find out what she's got? And I tell them, well, if there's no list anywhere, you can watch the mail. Well, now as mail goes electronic and banks don't want to send you statements anymore, that becomes even more difficult. So then I say, watch the email. But if they can't get into your email, that's not helpful. Worst case scenario, we have to order tax transcripts to see which bank is reporting income, like interest income, to the IRS, so we can figure out, okay, that's where they have income. But there are some asset searches and such, but it would be really helpful if you just made a list of, like, I have 3 accounts here or 2 accounts here, I have some stock or an annuity here. That would be helpful, something to keep with your estate plan. Another thing is a list of like your important people, your financial advisor, your insurance broker, your attorney, your accountant. That would be helpful because those people will have information that they can maybe provide to your successors. Providing the addresses of beneficiaries who may be unknown to your trustees could also be helpful. I've had clients that are really going, like flipping through a Rolodex or their parents' address book, trying to figure out who June Smith is that got left $5,000. So if you have someone like that maybe your successor trustee doesn't know, it might be helpful to give their contact information and keep it with your trust. And another thing is to consider sharing your plan with your trusted people, whoever's going to be in charge, and maybe even your beneficiaries, to say, hey, this is what I've done. I've named you in charge. I'm keeping my important documents in my desk drawer or something like that. I have it happen a lot where my clients hide their documents somewhere so good that they can't find them. So be careful with that. I put my estate planning documents, it's not in that big folder. I put it in a little peachy folder that should fit inside of a file or into a little safe or a safe deposit box, but tell people where you keep them. That would be super helpful. There is a provision in the law that says that if you have a will, if the person had a will in their possession when they died or was believed to have had it in their possession when they died, and it can't be found, that the person revoked it. So we have had cases where the estate plan disappears, and the person who may benefit from it disappearing is going to argue they burnt it. Of course, he changed his mind, and I'm the chosen son that had fallen from grace before, but now I get everything. So it is good to let people know where it is, and you can think about providing copies if you want to either your beneficiaries or your successor trustees. My warning is when you provide people copies, when you change things, you should also give those people copies. And sometimes it turns awkward because you'll give your trusted person that you've named as your successor trustee a copy of something, but then they tick you off, or maybe you just, aren't best of friends anymore, or you think they made a bad decision and you want to get them off and you later change it so they're not in charge. Then you got to go to them and say, hey, I know I gave you a copy, but just disregard that. So I always say put it in writing and say, hey, shred that. It's no longer good. So that's what you have to kind of be careful with giving copies to people, is that one of those older versions doesn't pop up and isn't touted as the real most recent version of something. So what are the alternatives to estate planning? You could do nothing. And a lot of people think that if you do nothing, that everything will go to the state. That, okay, well, if I don't write it down, then the state gets it all, more for California. That's not true. The state of California has laws of intestacy that are in the probate code that says who gets your stuff when you die. It's really long on the list, so some stuff does go to the state, but it usually follows the family tree first. So it'll follow to your natural heirs. It'll go to your kids if you have any. If you don't have kids, it goes up in the family tree to your parents. If your parents are dead, it'll go to your siblings and so forth. If you have deceased siblings, it'll go to those kids. So those are the laws of intestacy, that if you do nothing, your stuff isn't going to just disappear. It'll get taken care of. It'll go through intestacy and go to who the state says your beneficiary should be. And that isn't any more difficult typically than a normal probate. Except in cases where people don't have kids and don't have siblings, and then we get into very remote people. So I have had cases that we have like 35 beneficiaries, and we have air locators that are finding these people out of the woodworks and stuff like that. So that's where it gets complicated. But for most people, it doesn't make it any more complicated if you just don't do anything, as opposed to a normal probate where you probate a will. The only difference is that whoever can be the administrator of the estate, as opposed to a will where you name the executor. But our goal is to avoid probate in most cases. It's something that you can easily avoid by estate planning. You can also do a do-it-yourself type plan. I've seen a lot of them. Some are good, some are really bad. And most of them, there's something in there that's questionable that I'm like, I don't even know what this means. I had one guy, and he goes, my mom wrote this will herself. God bless her. She was so smart that she did this. And I read it, and I'm like, this is a disaster. We had all of these different beneficiaries, some that were in jail. I want you to hold it under these terms. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is a nightmare to deal with in a probate court. So the do-it-yourself type stuff, if it's super easy, it could work. I actually recommend, if people are like, should I get this form from like Office Depot or from online? I usually say if that's really where you're at and you've made up your mind, I'm not paying anybody to do this, this will be good enough, a holographic will might be your best bet. A holographic will is a handwritten document that you have to write in your own handwriting that you say, when I die, these people get this. You sign it and you date it, and it's a valid will. It doesn't have to be notarized. It doesn't have to be witnessed. Sometimes that's better. I had a client who recently did their own will, but she typed it, then signed it, then had it notarized. But the notary didn't sign their name, they just stamped it. So notaries, a good notary will know you're not supposed to do it. Wills shouldn't be notarized, they need to be witnessed. So we actually got that will admitted to probate just recently, but I had to go do all these declarations from all these random people like that were close to the lady who passed saying, yeah, she told me she had a will, she actually showed it to me, she put it in her safe, that sort of thing. So you can kind of mess up on the do-it-yourself things. But I've had people, I probated a will that was written on the back of a Taco Bell receipt, believe it or not. We went to court and the judge goes, hey, counselor, I don't see a will. And I said, oh, that's that receipt. You know, it's not the bean burrito I wanted you to see. It was what's on the back. And she really just signed, I want it all to go to my sister Sue. So, and signed it and dated it. It's a valid will. What you have to do to prove it in court, you have to prove that person's handwriting. So I've had people like hairdressers say, yeah, I saw Mrs. Smith every week for 6 years. That's how she signed her checks. That's her handwriting. Or you have family members. Yeah, she wrote me cards every year on my birthday and at Christmas. That's her handwriting. That's her signature. So I don't love holographic wills because somebody can just come contest the writing, and you might mess up a little bit on the wording. You might say, I give this stuff to this person, which doesn't show testamentary, yes, thank you. Because it doesn't say when I die. So you have to have testamentary intent. You have to say, this is something that I want to do when I die. Otherwise, you could argue, oh, they were just making a present gift. And so we have had things contested if it says, I give this person this, if it doesn't say when I die. Because then we say, oh, that was an ineffective gift. You can't make a gift by just writing it down and keeping it in your pocket. You have to do things like give it to the person and transfer your card to them or something like that. So be careful with the DIY stuff. The other thing you can do is transfer on death. So you can do a transfer on death deed. That's new to California as of a couple of years ago. It kind of came in hot. It's been valid in other states for a while. But in California, it just came in, I think it was 2021 when it just got implemented. And that's an okay thing. When it was first implemented, I did a couple of them. Attorneys all over were like, oh, this is great for some people that don't want to get too involved. This is better than them adding someone onto their house as a joint owner, for sure. But what happened was title companies said, you know what, we don't like these. And if you inherit something through a transfer on death deed, we're not going to let you sell that property. We're not going to give you title insurance, which basically makes that house unable to be sold, because if you don't have title insurance, nobody's going to want to buy the house. So there was a period of time where you had these revocable transfer on death deeds. People were inheriting houses, and the title company's like, good luck. I'm not doing anything. And what title companies would say is, we're going to wait 3 years, and then we'll give it to you. We want to see if this is contested. So then the law was changed a little bit. The transfer on death deeds now require witnesses. They now require, if you die and you have a transfer on death deed, a revocable transfer on death deed, that you send people notice of it. So before you transfer it to your name, you have to send people notice. So it turns into like a mini probate, which is kind of complicated. So I don't love these things. I had one of a client that did one a couple years ago before the law changed. The person died. The kids go to claim the property, which they do with on a little affidavit. Should be super easy. The recorder's office sends them a letter. Sorry, this is invalid. It wasn't witnessed by 2 people. They had to come pay me to tell the recorder's office, hey, when this was done, 2 witnesses weren't required, so it is valid. The recorder's office said, okay, my bad. It's okay. It's your property now. But that caused a lot of stress on people. So I don't like these things where the law keeps changing and new rules get added and title companies are deciding, do we like it or not? So I don't love revocable transfer on death deeds, but I do like it better than the last alternative. And the last alternative that people will do is they'll just add somebody on title to their house. So I have people come to me, I want to quit claim my house. Leah, just do a quit claim for me. Or my mom's sick, she wants to give me her house, just quit claim it. We don't want it to be a problem. So I don't like that because, one, you're giving up your house to someone else who may get mad at you and kick you out of your house because it's their house. If you add them on as a joint owner, which a lot of people do as a joint owner, then that person is now a legal owner. You can't change your mind. If you get mad at them, too bad, they own part of your house. So I don't like doing that. I will not do that for clients. Even if they come to me very determined to do that, I say, no, we can't. So that's the other alternative. I say stay away from that. Don't add people onto your assets. I've had things where kids have added parents on, or parents have added kids onto bank accounts, and that's not good because that money becomes their money. If they get sued or they have a tax problem, we've had the franchise tax board take money out of mom's account to pay the kids' taxes. So that's not a good thing. So when do you need to change an estate plan? If you have one, I tell people there's not a time. Most of them don't expire. The laws haven't changed all that much. But I say if you've moved recently, it's good to have it looked at. Especially if you've moved from out of state, it's good to have somebody look at it. Because when people come to me with a Tennessee estate plan, it's going to have Tennessee codes. I don't know what Tennessee law is, so we make it California law. So if you've moved, if you're changing the order of people because someone has something going on, I have a lot of clients that a kid gets sick and is battling breast cancer. We don't want them to have to be the trustee. It should really be the younger brother. So if you have things like that happen, it's good to look at your estate plan and see if you need to change it. The other thing is if you get mad at people or people die, it's a good thing to pull it out and see, do I need to change this? A lot of times people come to me, they can't believe who they have named in their old stuff. So it's like old financial advisors. Well, that's when the kids were little. He was going to watch the kids. Well, now that guy's old and is losing it. So take a look at your stuff to make sure that you have people that you actually want to be in charge when you can't be. So it may be good to update it. And even if it doesn't need to be updated, just take a look at it. Make sure you still have it. So when you die, what's trust administration? When you die with a trust, it can be super easy where I have people make one phone call to me and I say, yeah, just go gather the stuff, sell it, and distribute it. That's if everybody gets along and you don't have a ton of assets, and it kind of depends on who you've put in charge. So your successor trustee, if they're kind of a go-getter, they can do it themselves, which I have a lot of clients that can. They can just deal with the trust administration themselves. They don't necessarily need an attorney. So it really depends on the family dynamics. When you have multiple beneficiaries or multiple assets or people that don't get along, that's the biggest one. It's always good to get an attorney involved because there are notices that we're supposed to send out to people saying you have this many days to contest this. So it's always nice to get that time running to say you have 120 days to contest this. You've been given a copy. Fight it if you're going to, but you need to do that now. But trust administration, all in all, it is a lot of work, but it's way easier than a probate, usually. But those of you who have been the successor trustees for people know that it's still a headache. It's still a lot of paperwork that's complex and confusing. So some of the common issues that I see is, one of the biggest one I get is, I have a trust, Leah, and I went to the bank and I wanted to add my daughter on as a signer to my account, and they said the trust won't work, it's invalid. Okay, so I tell people, back up a little bit. That's not the case. I know when this happens, it's when you have your accounts in the name of the trust, which you should, but you want to have, for some reason or another, a kid or someone else as a signer to your account. You want them to have immediate access to your money. So if your account is in the name of the trust, you can't also have a signer to it. So the bank will say, go put your kid on as a trustee of your trust. And you could make an amendment to your trust and add your kid as a co-trustee. I don't usually think that's the best way. If you just want someone to have immediate access to some money, I tell people, take some amount of money out of your trust, put it in an account, and put that kid on as a signer, and also name your beneficiaries. So don't put all of your money in that account. I usually say enough to pay like 1 month's bills or something like that. If you're really worried, like I was in the hospital last month, I want someone to be able to sign for things, you can take money out of the trust, have a signer, and have beneficiaries. Just beware, because banks may add that person on as a joint owner. They don't need to be a joint owner to be able to sign on your accounts. So make sure that you're clear with the bank. I want to add this person on as a signer to this one account. Don't put all of your money. Don't put hundreds of thousands of dollars in this account. You know, a couple $1,000s is all you need. You make them as a signer, and then you name your beneficiaries. We talked about some of the misconceptions about without a will or a trust, everything goes to the state. That's not true. One one other thing that I get is that setting up a trust is complicated. It's really not. Really the biggest thing, like I told you when we started, what you need to know is who's going to be in charge and who gets your stuff when you die. There's a lot of filler stuff that goes in there, but those are really the biggest thing that people come to me and they're really stumped and they don't know those things. So if you figure that stuff out, you're really ahead of the game in setting up a trust. We talked about online things, the wills and trusts online. Just be careful. I've had clients. I had one guy that did an online trust. He wrote in the margins of the trust, I did not sign here because the instructions said not to sign if whatever. He didn't sign the trust at all. And he died. And I'm like, well, this is nothing. So that's happened a couple times, or people don't read it well enough. I had a lady who was actually like worked in a law office, helped her family fill out some online thing, bogus. And it was actually one of the California statutory wills. They just didn't read the directions, and it was no good. So be careful with the online stuff. You really have to read it carefully. And really all it does is it makes litigation attorneys a lot of money. Some of the changes in the laws that kind of affect this, we talked about the biggest thing with the threshold for probate going up. But Prop 19 with property taxes used to be if you inherited property from your parents, you got to keep their tax basis for property taxes. That's not the case in most cases anymore. Now it goes, if it goes from parent to child, it has to be parent's primary residence to child's primary residence. So the child has got to make that residence their primary residence, or else their taxes are going to be at the current level. We all voted on that, unfortunately. It was all put in with a thing that said, oh, this is going to help seniors move. It's better. So they're talking about repealing it. I haven't seen that happen. But anyway, that's one thing to watch is property taxes will likely go up. That doesn't mean that people are going to be taxed on it, just that the tax basis would be at the value of the house when you die instead of before. The gift tax, people talk about gift taxes. The estate tax, right now it's like $14 million. A lot of my clients are like, what are my heirs going to have to pay on their inheritance? And I'm like, well, how much money do you have? And most people don't have an estate tax issue. You have to be over $14 million for it to be an issue. That's going to sunset in 2025, but I think they're talking about extending it. For most people, estate tax is not the biggest driver in estate planning right now. It used to be $800,000. That's not the case anymore. It's so high, most of us, unfortunately, don't have to worry about that stuff. And then we talked about the new probate laws. So really, if you guys are out there and you have nothing or you have old things, what are you supposed to do now? I tell people the biggest thing is do as much of you can as independently as possible. It's way better if you guys pick the attorney, if you make the phone call to see the attorney, if you either have somebody drop you off or drive alone and you come in alone and tell the attorney what to do, what you want. Where my red flags start raising is when I have kids call, kids come in, kids fill everything out, kids want to come into the meeting with me, or they get ticked when I ask them to sit outside. And I have clients too. Hey, I want my kid. They're my other set of ears. I understand that. I get it. I go with my mom to her doctor's appointments. I look over things for her. I understand that having an extra set of ears is important. But I tell people it's great if you can do it alone first, and then we'll go over things with your kids. And the reason why is I need to hear it from you. I need to make sure that that kid is actually the one that you want to be in charge, because sometimes that kid that's a little bit bossy will say, of course I'm the one in charge, but you don't want it to be that one because they're too pushy. You want it to be one of the other kids or something like that. So biggest thing is do as much of it as you can alone. It makes it easier for the estate plan, and it also bolsters the legality of what I've done, because I can say this person came in alone, they drove alone, they told me what they wanted alone. Yes, a kid came later, we answered questions, that sort of thing. That's okay, but it just makes it a more solid thing if you guys do it yourselves. And really, if once you do that, you call my office, I ask that you fill out a questionnaire before you come in. That's really easy. It's really asking the things that I talked about, who you want to be in charge when you can't be, who you want to get your stuff when you die, the things that we talked about, the powers of attorney for healthcare and finances. We come in, we go over your questions, we go over your questionnaire. I'll tell you if I see things that I don't like. I'll be honest with you guys. I'll say, hey, in my experience, this isn't a good idea. Or this is something that you can do to make things easier for when you're gone. You guys will get the rough drafts of all the papers where you'll go over them. I'll highlight certain things that I really want you to read and pay attention to. We can meet again to go over your questions, or we do a phone call, or whatever the case is, and then we finalize everything. And then you fund your trust. I help you with the deed, transferring your house to the trust, but really your work begins with making sure your assets are transferred into your trust. So that's basically it for me today. If you guys have questions about anything that I've talked about or things that I haven't talked about, you can feel free to ask them. We have microphones in the audience, I think on both sides, so everyone can hear you, and for people that aren't here, for that to be broadcasted to them so they can hear as well. Any questions? Yes. Okay.
I'm coming.
For those of you dipping out, thank you for coming. I appreciate you. Yes.
Well, I had this done a couple of years ago, and I felt good about it. I got home with my paperwork, everything was squared away. And then I had a tragic thing happen, and so I just threw it in the trash.
Okay.
I called the lawyer. They said, come back, we'll do it again. Another $2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so things have changed again. And well, it hasn't changed yet, but I'm expecting that. So there's another $2,000 in the trash can. And I'm tired of this.
Yeah.
I do not like the way this runs. And you have said, call your office. You know how to make out a bill.
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do. And you will make out one for any of this. So for me, I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't, because I've been, as far as I'm concerned, I've been taken.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I do charge my time. There's an old saying, lawyers' stock and trade is their time. I have a business to run. I have a lot of people that come to me and want things free. They think that they've paid for it once and they get it for the rest of their lives for free. Unfortunately, if I spend time on it, I bill for it. So, and I know other lawyers are like that too. And you're lucky if you threw something away that you only had to recreate it, because a lot of times you'll have to go to court and tell a judge, this is what the trust said, and can you cancel the trust? So that's a good thing that you were able to throw it away and get away with it. But yes, changes will cost. And how much they cost, it really depends on the amount of changes that you have and how long it's been since you've made those changes.
I just want to make an announcement. Make sure they are general questions. They are not personal to you. No, she's got.
I'm just looking for, say, for instance, if we had the trust already created, and then after the trust, the house that the trust person was in was sold, should we go back and make modifications to the trust, because now the money that was generated from the sale of the house is sitting in the bank?
That's a good question. So if the house was just sold and a new house wasn't purchased, you don't necessarily have to make changes to your trust. So if the only reason why you'd have to make changes, if you specifically said in your trust that this specific house goes to this specific person, then maybe you should look at it again and see. But if it's just general that this money goes to, or whatever's in my trust goes to these people, then you won't necessarily need to make a change. One thing that's important, though, is to make sure that the money that's in the bank is in an account that's in the trust name, because that'll mean that it'll go to the trust. But that was a good question. Even if you buy a new house, you can buy it in the name of the trust, and you won't have to necessarily change your trust.
I think this is a general question. A trust that's maybe 10 to 12 years old, has there been enough significant changes in the law in California to have it reviewed and redone?
I would say generally no. I mean, an old trust can be a good trust, and there haven't been too many changes. The only thing that I routinely see in old trusts, will be just more complicated provisions, like the AB trust that I talked about. Those were kind of standard in the 80s and 90s, where trust would split into 2 different provisions. But no, there's nothing that's changed so radically that would mean that you should have your trust looked at.
Upon the death of a spouse, should you get a new trust drawn up?
So you don't necessarily have to. It kind of depends on what your trust says. If everything went to the surviving spouse, then the trust can just stay as it is. You don't even have to take the predeceased spouse's name off title by doing an affidavit of death of trustee. You don't necessarily have to do that. So you don't necessarily need a new trust, and unless there's some reason why you want to change things. And then it would be a case-by-case basis on what you want to change, and like disinheriting people that might have been in the old trust may be a reason why you would do a new trust so they don't get notice of it. So it kind of depends. But I try to avoid people having to do brand new trusts. So I would say the answer, it depends, but probably no unless you have changes.
Over here.
Okay.
So one general question, do you have cards available?
I do not.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm in your magazine, the Lifestyles magazine.
Hi, Leah.
Hello.
Thank you for all of the information. It's been wonderful. But my question is, what do you do when the executor passes?
So if the executor passes, hopefully there's a backup to them. Because I like in my estate planning to have 2 or 3 backups. And if your first person died, if you have other people named as backups, then it's okay. You can just put that they're deceased and it shouldn't be any kind of issue. But sometimes you can update it, but that is a good question. I have some clients that just want to update it to get their name off, but you don't necessarily have to so long as you have backups.
Leah, over here.
I just have a general question. If you had your trust done already and everything was specified, something happens and you want to change, let's say, the percentages of the benefits that are going to the survivors. Does that have to be done in writing? Is it something that you can do by hand, sign it, have it notarized, or does it have to be like a codicil, or how does that handle?
So that's a good question. So most trusts will say what needs to be done to make an amendment to it. But I would say don't scratch on it like a lot of people will put, like interlineate and make revisions, only because it kind of lends itself to someone contesting it to make sure that you actually did it, and it could be invalid. So I always say if it's a change like that, that's a pretty significant change, you should go to the lawyer who did it or go to another lawyer and tell them that you want to make a formal amendment to it. Most amendments need to be in writing. I mean, for sure it needs to be in writing. Some say that it needs to be notarized and delivered to the trustee, who's probably you if it's your trust. But good question. But with something like that, because it's so important, I would say have somebody, a professional do it.
All right, question over here.
I would just like to know how would you take care of a situation, or would you assign a beneficiary if you wanted to leave a certain amount of money to the person that is going to take care of your pets?
Okay, so that's a good question. We can do that in your trust. You can make a provision in your trust for pets. It goes all the way where you can make pet trusts, where you leave money in trust for someone to pay for the person that's caring for your trust. That gets super complicated, so most people don't want to do that, but I have done provisions where I say, my pet and $5,000 go to a person selected by my successor trustee, or something like that, or that to give your trustee the power for rehoming fees or that sort of thing. So yeah, that is an option. You could do that. I wouldn't name them as a beneficiary like directly on an account if it's not tied to them taking care of the animal.
I went to the San Gregorio emergency room, and I was diagnosed with AFib and COVID. I signed myself out against medical advice because I had to go home and feed my pets.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's important. you can put those provisions also in a power of attorney for finances, where it allows the person that you've named under that document to take care of your pets too. But that is a good point.
Okay, we're going to take one more question right here, and then if you have other questions, Leah will still be around, and you can talk to her in the back.
Did I understand you to say that if your bank account is in your trust and your trustee go into the bank showing that they are the executive of your estate and they have a certified death certificate, that they can't touch your money?
No, so not the
Okay.
case. This is really what I talked about with adding a signer is when you're alive, you're the trustee of your trust and your bank account is in the name of the trust, but you want to give like somebody who maybe your successor the right to sign on checks right now. So if that's where it's difficult, is if you want them to have an immediate access and they're not a trustee, you're the trustee, you're the only one in charge of your money, so you can't add someone on if it's in the trust. But upon your death or incapacity, so if a doctor says that you're hung up or you can't manage your finances, or upon your death with a death certificate, it should be very easy for your successor trustee to get the money. But it's when people want to do it like preventatively and say, I want this person to be able to write a check tomorrow from my trust account. There's no easy way to do that. You either have to add them as a co-trustee or just take money out of and make a separate account with them as a signer on it. Does that make sense? But in your case, no, that shouldn't be the case. It should be easy.
Okay, well,
Leah Larkin. Larkin, yes.
So she will be here in the back, and you can talk to her, and if you have any personal questions that you want to ask her. But Leah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I was really great to be here with you guys.
I know you put a whole lot in here. And I just want to let you know that next month, I think it's August 5th, is our next presentation, and it is from Alzheimer's, the association. I have somebody coming in. So it should be a very good presentation. Thank you.
That is a good one. Thank you. Have a happy 4th of July.